Welcome to a Monday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolf. Catch us Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and tell us what you think. Leave us a review. Time to bring in Nick and the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. We're going to start in Denver right now, where the Broncos hosted the Cowboys, and the Cowboys hosted a whole bunch of issues on offense. Ezekiel Elliott was basically a no-show, only gaining 8 yards on 9 carries. Dak Prescott came back down to earth, throwing for 238 yards with 2 picks. After it was all said and done, Prescott was quick to accept responsibility for the loss.
If I make more plays, we give ourselves a chance in that game, and I just simply didn't make the plays. There's no excuse for it. And playing like that, you won't win a game, no matter who you play.
I do not think this is a picture of what our team is at all, and won't accept that.
All right, so Nick, I'll start with you. Is Dak Prescott good enough to win when Zeke Elliott struggles?
Of course he's good enough. We didn't have a precedent for this because this was Zeke's first bad game since the first game of he and Dak's career, week 1 of last season. Since then, Zeke has been nothing but productive. But yes, Dak is good enough to win without a running game. He wasn't yesterday. Yesterday he was bad. Yesterday they were playing an outstanding defense, a Broncos defense that sure looked like the Broncos defense that was good enough to get them to a couple of Super Bowls. But Dak has been nothing but excellent since he set foot in the NFL 19 games ago. And we keep doing this thing where we are so tied to the fact that Dak was not a high draft pick, that Connor Cook and Paxton Lynch and all these guys that are not, and Christian Hackenberg were taken in front of him, that we are looking for reasons. Our friend Troy Aikman during the game opined about whether or not, this is where the Cowboys missed Tony Romo. Dak Prescott is better than Tony Romo was. Dak Prescott is still, despite yesterday, in the midst of the best start to a career of any quarterback ever, and yet people are going to pin this loss on him because it was the first time we've seen him be bad in quite some time.
Quarterbacks of the National Football League, it's consistent. They get too much credit when the teams are going well and the offenses are moving or the teams are winning. And when everything else goes wrong, it's easy to blame the quarterback. So when things aren't well, then let's blame the quarterback. But I believe we can examine Dallas and stop trying to separate the success of Zeke and the success of Dak. They run hand in hand. Now, you said that Zeke had a bad game. Zeke didn't have a bad game. He didn't even have the chance to have a good game. The offensive line had a bad game. So the ability for the team to function, and that's what makes Dallas team offensively special, is that offensive line. If they're not doing their job, Zeke can't run the way he wants to, which also leaves the defense on the field, that you can take advantage of their secondary, which I believe is subpar, which also, if their passing game, which wasn't, because they had 6, 7 guys in the box. Their passing game was not dominant. So the question to me would be, wow, when they can't run the ball, can Dallas have a dominant passing game? And that, to me, is the biggest question about their offense. If you commit a bunch of people to the line of scrimmage, can they beat you? Can Witten, can Dez Bryant, can Cole Beasley, can these guys effectively, with Dak, beat you in the passing game? Now, going against Denver still has the advantage in the running game and the passing game because they have personnel not like most defenses have. So it's like a copycat league. Well, why won't other teams do what Denver did? They don't have 2 all-pro corners. They don't have a first-round draft pick that they use as their nickelback, Roby from Ohio State. He was on Dez one-on-one a bunch of times. So they have very, very unique personnel. Playing in Denver, as I told you guys all last week, would be a difficult task for Dallas. So you can place the blame all the way around. It's not on Dak. Can he carry it? This offensive line, they had a bad game, which didn't allow Zeke to be able to get off. He touches the ball the few number of times he did, not a run over 10 yards. Like, how are you going to win? So it's easy. Okay, let's look at Dak. but Witten's got to play better. Dez Bryant in one-on-one coverage, something we talked about all last week. If you're an elite player, you have to win those battles. You have to have a dominant game. When they target you, the number of times that they targeted Dez, you expect bigger results.
16 targets, and he got manhandled.
So let's spread the blame all the way around to Dallas, especially, and you got to start with that offensive line.
Nick, does Denver come in saying, hey, you know what? If we just attack the offensive line, if we just stop Ezekiel Elliott, if we just hold that run game back, we'll win this game? I mean, was that their plan all along?
It appears that was their plan, and that they trusted that those all-pro corners could win their matchups. There's not many teams in the league that can say, we're just going to trust both our corners, in some cases all three of our corners, that they're just going to be better than you. And the game got away from Dallas early. Zeke didn't just have a bad game. He had, I would guess, the worst football game of his life, not his professional career. Do you think Zeke, in his whole life, do you think he's ever had a game where he had more carries than yards?
Probably not.
9 carries for 8 yards. And Zeke compounded the error by giving up on a play when the game was still in the balance. And we can show it. On Dak's first interception, Zeke is the closest player to the ball. Watch this. And Zeke just stops, and they'll show it again from another angle. Zeke puts his hands on his hips, stops, and when he cuts back, when Chris Harris cuts back, that's where, watch Zeke here. Sees it, I'm done with this play. You can't do that. You can't do that. Forget all the controversy surrounding Ezekiel Elliott. You are one of the best athletes on the field. You are one of the youngest players on the field. As many interceptions do, this one cuts back the other way. If you're pursuing that play, one of your offensive linemen doesn't have to make that tackle. Maybe you can go and do the Maurice Claret from the Fiesta Bowl and force a fumble. You don't know what happens there. You can't give up on a play like that.
You can also get knocked out. Now, I played with the guy, Randy Moss, and there was a number of plays just like that where he would get criticized. And people are like, oh, he's not playing hard. Well, let's go back to Zeke when he came into the NFL. What was the scouting report? The scouting report was he's one of the best 3-down backs. He's even better without the ball than he is with the ball because he blocks, he picks up blitzes. That's his MO. So now we've watched him play a whole season and 2 games. And now we got one play out of those hundreds of plays that we've seen him play that we're going to say, okay, yeah, that happens all the time. It's just that we're pointing him out. I see this week in and week out.
And I've been
no, it doesn't make it, but it's part of the game. Also, when you chase a guy like that, you can also get blindsided because when they get an interception defensively, they are trying to hurt people. I.e. Warren Sapp, when he knocked the guy out for Green Bay, like we also are conditioned as players.
All those other guys on Dallas were just as susceptible to injury, and they all chased after the play. I'm not arguing that this undercuts who Zeke is as a player. I'm not arguing this defines him as a player. What I am saying is it's a bad look when you are personally having the worst game maybe of your life, certainly as a pro, and you compound it by giving up on a play when the game's still in the balance.
I've seen this happen too many times, and I just don't believe people are fair. It's not a matter, is it right or is it wrong? It happens. It happens in the NBA, happens in Major League Baseball, and it happens in the NFL. Yes, he gave up on the play, but also he didn't want to get hit, all right? Because if you chase a guy, them other 10 defenders, all right, there's one with the ball, now you can be blocked. If you give yourself up, they won't block you. So is it a play that I encourage? No, but I see guys do it all the time. And it's called protect your career.
But if all of them did the same thing, he's got a free path to the end zone. But if all of them had the same rationale.
Listen, it's part of the game. There's a bunch of bad plays. That did not cause Dallas to lose.
I know it didn't cause Dallas to lose. Let me just ask you this, because I know we're up against it. If you're in the film room, you're the veteran leader on the team, and you see that, what are you saying to Ezekiel Elliott?
I'm going to be very careful because I've seen too many guys get blindsided. I've seen too many guys get their ACL blown out chasing after people, all right? Be a pro, but also be smart. All right? You have to be smart.
I think there is a big gulf between being smart and where he was. I think he could have given more effort and still protected himself.
I'm just going to tell you something. when you see that ball intercepted, given the way the game was going, your state of mind right there could be, you know something, seen it bounce, I'm going to let that play go on. And that's exactly what he did. Now, is that a crime? No, it's not. No, it's not. But I've seen players do it all the time. It's not a matter of making excuses. This happens all the time. Say, do players take plays off? Absolutely, they take plays off.
Will he be spoken to about this? Will anyone say anything to him?
No. Okay. No, because it had nothing to do with the game.
Jason Garrett won't say anything to him. It's just they move on from something like this.
What's he going to tell him? Hey, Zeke, I want you to chase a guy from behind.
I want you to give up on the whistle blow.
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't.
Chris, I know we're late, so maybe we can't show it right now, but when that interception happens, because the wide receiver's momentum's taking him the other way, he's the guy who has the best chance to make that play.
They had 60 plays offensively.
I get it. I know that play wasn't the biggest play of the game, but it was indicative of a bigger problem. This morning, everyone's going to be crushing Dak, because people are looking for reasons why Dak isn't great. And this morning, everyone's going to be saying, see, as soon as Zeke has a bad game, Dak turns into a pumpkin. And I'm trying to add a little context to that. But I know we're going to talk about this all day long. So.
Continuing on First Things First, Daryl Johnston in studio with us. Last week, the sports world was discussing the downfall of Tom Brady. He was done. Remember, he was finished.
Right?
That didn't last long.
I'm not going to take this.
New England dominated the Saints 36-20. Brady threw for 3 touchdowns. He had over 400 yards. Gronk had 116 yards and a touchdown, but he left in the third quarter with a groin. Just like saying it sort of inside. Moose, you convinced the Patriots are back after blowing out New Orleans. And not back all the way, just back to the Patriots that we've been talking about in the last couple of years.
Well, a perfect setup, right? You guys made great points. You know, playing Thursday night, New Orleans has got to play Monday. Terrible defense over the last 4 or 5 years. So if you want to get healthy, you couldn't have put a better scenario up for him. Did you really count Tom Brady out last week?
I see these guys, they're misrepresenting.
He's done.
This is what I didn't count him out. Never came out of my mouth.
Worst human ever, I think you said.
That was in the production meeting. You didn't actually say that on TV. But I like to bring the people behind the scenes.
Just tell me when the lies are over.
Okay.
All I did was I had the audacity to say we have, in this great 98-year history of this sport, we have no precedent for a quarterback starting a season as old as Brady is and being good that year. There's no precedent for it.
But we've never had a Brady before.
Okay, so that I agree with that. But so even if Brady breaks the mold, going 10-6 would be breaking the mold. Being the third guy selected to the Pro Bowl would be breaking the mold. Everyone went into the season saying that the Pats were the biggest favorite to win a Super Bowl since the Pats after the undefeated season. Like, they were overwhelming favorites in their conference and in the league. And before the Chiefs game, was pumping the brakes on it. Then the Chiefs game happens. I'm like, some questions here.
The Chiefs have been waiting for that game for 2 years. So I was not surprised at the outcome. I was surprised by Kareem Hunt, some of the things that we saw within that game. But that was a game that they'd had marked for a while. They wanted a shot from that playoff loss a couple of years ago that they felt they really let one get away from them. So that doesn't surprise me. And this organization, we saw it the last time. They said it was Kansas City who did this to them a couple of years ago.
Monday night.
So maybe that's just not their matchup. Maybe that's Dallas's Denver. Maybe they just don't match up well against them. But Tom is just, they win with Corey Dillon in a defense. They win with Randy on the outside and Wes in the slot. They win with double tight ends. They brought the double tight end. Whatever they have at their disposal, they will find a way to win. And even with all these guys hurt, I don't know if anything ever slows these guys down.
Right. I wouldn't be concerned about Tom. I'd be concerned about the timing between the wide receivers. They dressed only 3 guys yesterday for the game. Hogan got banged up in the game. How would they utilize the trade of Philip Dorsett coming over? He had a couple catches in the game, but another small guy, like where are you going to play him? You're going to play him in the slot? Who's going to play outside on a regular basis? Can they have a sustained running game to be able to help that defense and their linebacking core? If you get them in man-to-man coverage, you can take advantage of that. So there are things to worry about in New England, but I don't believe Tom Brady is part of that concern.
One of the big concerns they'll now have is Rob Gronkowski and what happens to him. And I think they thought that once he had all that time off and he was rested that he was going to come back full tilt. But now he leaves with a groin injury. And that's one of those nagging injuries, isn't it? I mean, do you ever come back full in the season from that, or is that going to be a week-to-week thing?
Well, most skilled guys, if you think about soft tissue injuries in the first month of the season, it's either one or two things. It's either a hamstring are growing. And those things come with, you can't simulate running through tackles. You can't simulate your cleats being in the ground and people pulling at your legs. So you get a lot of these things early in the season. With Gronk, it's just a ticking time. Like, is he going to make it through the whole year? He's had a lot of injuries, but I'm not necessarily concerned about anything to do with Gronk's arms, forearms, or back. Those are the things. He came into the league with a back problem. So those are the things I would worry about. I wouldn't worry about soft tissue, especially on a skilled guy early in the season.
Agreed. But, he is carrying a lot. So, and the thing with him, he's one of those guys, too, that it's not so much the production as it is the emotion, the intangibles that he brings. I just think they miss something when he's not in the lineup. And that's another void that they have to fill. And there's nobody with his personality on that team.
Well, and there was a couple interesting moments yesterday because records were broken, right? So Jason Witten got 1,100 and who did he pass in catches? It was Cris Carter. But he had 1,102 catches yesterday, so they show that list. They also then Antonio Gates.
He has 65 touchdowns, too.
Okay, all right.
That's half the number I have.
Okay, all right, chill.
But he's not counting.
I'm not the numbers guy. I'm sorry. But 130, 65.
Okay, exactly half. You're right. We know if you add Witten and Michael Irvin's career touchdowns together, they equal Cris Carter's. That's great. That's awesome. That's why you're in the Hall of Fame. But they also showed Antonio Gates. He tied for the career touchdowns Tony Gonzalez, or passed Tony Gonzalez. And one thing that I found interesting was how short of a list of tight ends with these monster numbers are, because that's a hard position to play at a super high level for a long time. We were talking during the break about Jay Novacek, who was with you guys during your guys' run, but that position, because when you do catch passes, it's usually over the middle and you're getting crushed. Blocking is hard on your body. You know that better than just about anyone in the world. It's hard for a lot of tight ends. The flame burns very bright, then burns out. I mean, dated reference, but Jeremy Shockey looked like, oh my God, he's going to change the position. And his career then was gone. Kellen Winslow Jr., oh my God. And then his career. So with Gronk, we have seen, what's the last year Gronk was fully healthy the whole year? Yeah. I can't remember. So that, to me, is a real concern. Whether or not Gronk, when you don't have Edelman anymore, whether or not Gronk can stay on the field and you can count on him to stay on the field.
And I think one of the things people don't realize with Gronk, he's one of the best end-of-the-line blockers in the NFL. Oh, yeah. Like, we know he's one of the best pass catchers. We know he's so reliable coming across that deep dig across the middle that him and Tom like so much. But his ability to give them a huge advantage in the running game when they don't have him in there, or his back is not stable, those are things that, as the season goes on, those are things in New England that you must continue to watch.
So, Moose, explain it to me, because I've asked the same question 4 different times, and I just don't know if I'm happy with the answer. How does a team with a 40-year-old quarterback, a very shaky defense right now, a tight end who's always questionable, Edelman's out for the year, Amendola's got his concussion, there's a whole list of injuries, how does a team like that go on to win 12, 13 games and, who knows, maybe end up wherever they end up?
They all trust the process that Coach Belichick puts them through. He never deviates from it. So the consistency that he has, regardless of the situations or circumstances surrounding that team, is always the same. And we see one side of it from the media when you see the post-game press conferences and the very curt responses to the media. But you talk to people that are inside, that they all buy into it. They all understand it. You wouldn't see people at the end of their career going to that place for an opportunity to win a Super Bowl if they didn't have the belief that every year they have a viable option to win this. Chris Long, Randy Moss. I mean, the list is long of the people that go there to get one shot, and they think that that's their best opportunity.
We continue with the NFC Championship rematch, Packers and Falcons, and once again, the Falcons jumped out to a huge lead and held on for the win. Can't blame Aaron Rodgers. He threw for 343 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is what he had to say after the game.
This is, potential matchup down the line. Hopefully, we put ourselves in that position. But, it's a tough game. They're a fantastic team, very well coached, MVP quarterback. But a game we're in it. I gave him a 7 on the fumble, gave him another 7 on the pick. We lose by 11, so.
Moose, was this just a bad game for the Green Bay Packers, or is this a sign that there are bigger problems on this team moving forward?
I just think it's a tough matchup with Atlanta in that dome. They're built a specific way. It was interesting. We talked to Ron Rivera a couple of years ago, and he doesn't like New Orleans in New Orleans, and he doesn't like Atlanta in Atlanta because Carolina's built to be outside on the grass. You look at Green Bay, I don't know if they're built like Carolina is, but when you go into those facilities, you go in against those types of teams that are built that way with speed on the offense, on the defense, special teams, everything. So when Atlanta or New Orleans back in the day gets on that roll in that environment, in that setting, it is tough to stop them. And so that's why I think you see when Atlanta's moving and firing on all cylinders, they'll jump out on you 31-7 real quick. But I like what Aaron Rodgers did. He kept it all in perspective. You know, listen, hey, hopefully we're going to get a chance to see him again later in the season, which means playoffs. It's similar to what he did with the Relax a couple of years ago. He keeps everything in perspective. It's difficult to win a game on a Sunday afternoon in the NFL every week.
And he does what a lot of players and coaches want you to do in answering the questions. He didn't refer to any other players. He didn't pass the blame. He's like, man, I had 2 bad plays. If I don't make those plays, I mean, we lose by 11, we're in the game. So I do like the answer. The obvious thing was don't make excuses. When you start the game, and it's an NFC Championship rematch, your left tackle, he's inactive. Your right tackle is inactive. Now, we've struggled running the ball. Now, the thing you mentioned before, going into a place like Atlanta, Green Bay is not a real fast, athletic football team, all right? They play in Lambeau Field. The grass is a little higher, all right? So your characteristics for which you develop, they're a little bit different around your football team. Daniels, their nose tackle, he's out of the game. I mean, he wreaked havoc in the Seattle game. I think in watching Green Bay in week number 2, we still had one eye on week number 1 and watched and saw how good they looked against Seattle and how poorly they looked in week number 2. But I wasn't expecting a great effort, especially out of that offense with their 2 offensive linemen deactivated before the game.
I have a high level of concern for Green Bay, and maybe this is my own confirmation bias. It might be because this confirmed my worry about them headed into the season. The Packers won the Super Bowl in 2010. That was the last year they had a defense in the top 10 in either scoring or total yards. Every year since then, they have 0 years have they had a top 10 defense. Most years it's been a bottom 10 defense. And last year, what did we see in the NFC Championship game? The defense just couldn't match up with Atlanta. Week 1, I'm like, oh, I think Seattle's going to be pretty damn good. Mike Daniels and Green Bay, they really imposed their will. Maybe the defense now can be just good enough. Now, I know Mike Daniels didn't play in this game or got injured in this game. But this looked to me like the same old Packers defense, where the plan is, hey, Aaron, if you can score 35, we got it. If not, it's going to be a struggle. And that's so frustrating for me because the Packers, I believe, have the best player in football, one of the best, most talented quarterbacks I've ever seen. And it seems to me since the year after they won the Super Bowl and they were 15-1, since then they've been complacent. They won't participate in free agency. Like, we can name the notable Green Bay free agents in the last decade off one hand. It's Julius Peppers. It's Martellus Bennett this year. Charles Woodson at one point. Like, I mean, that's the list. They don't go out and participate in free agency, and they just rely on Aaron Rodgers. And last night I saw a team that ran it back from the NFC Championship game and somehow was surprised with the results. In the NFC Championship game, you were down 31-7 early in the third quarter. Last night, you're down 31-7 early in the third quarter. I wonder why. Because it's the same 2 teams.
I think the other part is the offensive line. I think you make a great point with the tackles. When Green Bay has also struggled, and they don't participate in free agency. They haven't added any big defensive stars. They have always relied on the quarterback to win games, going back to Favre.
Yes. I
remember talking with Favre one time. He goes, there's so much pressure. I feel it. He had a season with a ton of interceptions. He goes, but every time I go out on the field, I feel like I have to have points. I have to get at least 3 because I know the defense is not going to be able to hold them. So that dynamic has been in Green Bay for a long time. But I think the other thing you have to look at, when that offensive line, when that starting 5 can stay together all season, they're also a different team. And to have both tackles out last night against Beasley, against that speed off the edge, that's a tough thing to walk into. They haven't been running the ball well. So I just think what we're talking about here, and this is my belief now, the way the CBA is set up and the way we do go through preseason, September is the new preseason. It takes 4 weeks to find out who you are in the NFL, and Green Bay's finding out who they are. Dallas is finding out who they are. New England's finding out who they are. We're not going to know until week 5 really where the NFL sits in both conferences.
And also, was there an NFL team that had a tougher start than Seattle, home and then going to Atlanta, opening up the new Mercedes-Benz.
No, that's a totally fair point. Now, maybe we'll look back, and if Seattle's not as good as we thought, we would adjust that. But when the schedule came out, no team looked at the first 2 weeks
and
were like,
that you're predicting will win their division.
Absolutely.
And you played them week 1 and week 2.
And so you guys mentioned that the Packers don't necessarily like playing in a dome.
Never have. Look at their record in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Right, but that would be a concern, right? When Dallas plays in a dome, Minnesota plays in a dome, Detroit plays in a dome, Atlanta plays in a dome.
But you play 8 games. You have to develop your team around where you're going to play your 8 games. Chicago has been this way for years, all right? They got that Kentucky bluegrass. It grows a little higher. It's for a slower field, all right? Green Bay is the same way. Minnesota has always had an undersized defense and a lot of speed. Dallas, they have a lot of speed on their defense. That's why their defensive coordinator does a great job at getting those guys to move around. So you have to have a team that's around your home field. Now, Green Bay, they've had a franchise for 20 years that's been circled around that quarterback. You guys make just enough plays, and we got a dude back here that can win us the game. That's what they did with 4, and that's what they're doing with 12.
The other thing you can do, though, to really kind of make it a successful season is to look around the league, look around your conference. Where do we need to get better? I always go back to Andy Reid when he was in Philadelphia early on, and it was the greatest show on turf. And for us to get where we have to go, we're going to have to beat the Rams. So that one year he comes out and he goes corner, corner, corner. First 3 draft picks. So, yeah, we're going to build our team around the 8 games that we play, but we've also got to keep an eye on who the big guys are in our conference and what do we need to do to beat that team. So I think maybe Green Bay needs to, all right, we got a great quarterback, we're doing this, but who are the big guys out there? And what do we have to do if we have to go on the road? That's why it's such a huge thing during the course of the season.
Yes.
Like you said, if you have to go through Lambeau, if you have to go through some of these places, it's a completely different thing.
Well, on paper, they get to sort of take a little bit of a break next week hosting the Bengals.
Oh,
so
they do.
We'll
they'll look good. They'll look good. Andy Dalton.
Should bet on them next week. Get a chance.
Chill.
Welcome back to First Things First. So yesterday, CC tweeted out this picture of him and Colin Kaepernick here in New York.
Oh, I thought Kaepernick was homeless.
CC, tell us what happened here. How'd you run into him, and what'd you guys talk about?
We live in the same part of town. We both live in Tribeca. We've been missing each other. There's some people that were trying to get us to kind of meet up. And I saw him and approached him, talked with him, asked him about his interest in playing. I had to do the field test.
Show me the field test.
Because people been saying Cap, oh, he needs to put back on some weight. Oh, he's getting too skinny. Oh, he's a vegan now, and all these other. Man, this is a football player. Now, I thought yesterday I was watching all the best players play, but there's no way that he shouldn't be on an NFL roster. He wants to play.
He told you he wants to play.
Absolutely. I mean, besides, hey, how you doing? That's the first question. Man, do you want to play some football? Because there's a lot of people out here advocating for him to play, and the worst thing would be for him, I don't know really what I want to do. No, he wants to play football. He believes he's got a gift to play football and believes that he can get a lot better as a quarterback. So it was nice to see him. It was nice to be able to see his state and talk to him and see his state of mind. And he's missing the game. All right, it's one thing in the summer, OTAs, it's one thing in training camp, but when you start seeing regular season and you start seeing people, Josh McCown, starting games in the NFL.
Brian Hoyer for his former team. They haven't scored a touchdown this year.
It starts to be a little more personal, and that's what I sensed in the conversation.
Did you get a sense, the reason many people feel he's not playing is for political reasons. Did you get a sense that maybe he's ready, he wants to put that behind him and just focus on football, or is it a package deal?
Well, he made that clear that he wasn't going to protest the national anthem. He made that clear 6 months ago. So that's not in question. Now the question is, the only thing they can argue is, does he fit into our system? Now, that's a good argument.
It'd be a better argument if Jacoby Brissett didn't just start for a team.
After being in New England, traded to Indianapolis, and start a game. So, yes, it can be done, but which team will take that chance and say, you know something, it's about the best players, it's not about anything else. And then I believe Cap will be signed. But it will take another injury or two to the right team, because Cap can't go anywhere. We can't say, okay, he can just go to any team and play. All right? He's a certain player that it has to be a coach in an organization that will support his ability and how he's going to play.
There was something else interesting that happened right before you talked with Cap. That was the NFL Players Association. If people don't know how that works, that is the Association of Professional Football Players. They gave out their second Man of the Week award this year. The first one went to J.J. Watt for his hurricane relief, $37 million, I think. This one went to Colin Kaepernick for, he donated, I think, the $900,000 of his $1 million pledge to promote social justice, to help guys who are coming out of jail to get jobs, the different things he's done. And that was noteworthy because the Players Association doesn't do something that's going to anger their members, which are, of course, the players. And so we saw already, it's chapter and verse at this point. We know the two head coaches he's had have talked about how good he is in the locker room. We know the last team he was on awarded him their Man of the Year. We know the NFL Players Association feels it's important enough to keep him in the consciousness. They awarded a player that's not on a roster right now, but still one of their members, with their Man of the Week. And we also know that in a world where Brian Hoyer, Josh McCown, Jacoby Brissett, Scott Tolzien have started games this year, we know he's good enough. So, we know all these things. The fact that the owners don't want to let it happen.
That's it. None of those other people you mentioned are in the business to hire him. It's not on their. That's not what they do. Their job isn't to hire him. It's all about the owners. The owners will decide whether Colin Kaepernick plays or not. Which is why what I'm going to say is, maybe if he is ready to put what happened politically behind him and just play football, and he doesn't want to talk about what happened, then why can't he just say, hey, to the owners, I'm here. I am. Everyone wants to interview. I'm ready.
Yeah, there's other players protesting now.
I understand. We're not talking about other players. We're talking about, and those guys are playing. So we're talking about.
So how can the other guys play and he can't protest?
All I'm saying, you can protest, but what I'm saying is, why not just protest all you want? I'm for his protest. I believe in his cause. I appreciate the time and money. No, I don't care. I want him to open his mouth and say, I want to play. I'm in shape.
He told me that.
Me a chance. He told you that because you bumped into him on the street.
He told Sean King that of the New York Daily News as well.
And there are so many people that have tried to get an interview with him and tried to approach his agent. Just, hey, tell us something.
So hold on. No.
You've had months and months and months. I'd love to just hear you say, I want to play football.
An NFL team won't call him and interview him and give him a tryout. But you want him to go out to the national media and to what? To apply for a job?
A question that everyone's been
The owners
answering.
already have decided they've already colluded not to sign him.
There's a reason why they colluded not to sign him, or if they colluded. Reportedly, I don't know if they did or not.
Look at these bums playing.
Okay. So then put yourself out there. Maybe swallow a little bit of pride and say, hey, guys, I want to play. I'm ready. So now if you don't call me.
People keep changing why he's not employed. Right. It was, we got to wait for free agency. Then it was, we got to wait for the draft. Then it was, we got to wait for training camps. Then it's, we got to wait for injuries. And now it's, he won't talk.
I've said that from the beginning.
If it were, okay, maybe that's what you've been saying from the beginning. If getting a job in the National Football League was as simple as doing an interview.
No,
then,
Nick.
What?
You're breaking it down and you're simplifying it. It's not that. We happen to want to hear from him. I think if he had just put himself out there and say, hey, this is my call. And I get it, CC.
You know what every other player is putting out there? They put their stats out there. Every other player is putting their stats out there.
So then put your will and your desire to want to play and you'll get your stats.
He told me he wants to play. He can't get an interview. He can't get an interview, Jenna.
All right.
No one will try him out. They try out players 5 days
for the last
a week.
7 months.
Oh, he's not hidden. He's not hidden from the NFL owners.
The Giants take on the Lions tonight, and all eyes are on Odell Beckham Jr.'s ankle. OBJ has said it's a 6 to 8 week injury, and he hurt the ankle exactly 4 weeks ago today. He's questionable tonight against Detroit. CC. We ask this again. We continue to ask it. Do the Giants have a chance if Odell sits? Because I think it looks like now you were in touch with him that it's bothering him a little bit.
I mean, they're a different football team. And we got a couple of things at play. He has practiced for several days. But the thing with the high ankle sprain is that the ankle and the Achilles and the calf get very, very sore. because you're trying to compensate for the ankle, so you get soreness in these other areas. He's trying to work through the soreness. He would love to play. It is truly a game time decision, and he's been released to practice, but the Giants medical staff has not released him to play in the game yet. So we'll find out tonight if the Giants are going to release him. I think that they are going to release him, but this is a very difficult injury, and given Odell's mindset, I'm still afraid. I'm right back to where I was week number 1. I know he's not healthy, but I think he's going to force himself out there through the training staff, through the workout, telling him he's not in as much pain as he is, and he's going to force himself onto the field tonight.
He's got to play. I mean, for the Giants to have a chance, he's got to play. Detroit, I do not think is a great team, but they can score some points. And we saw that the Giants have a total inability to score points, and we saw that they couldn't score points. I think this part of the season, competition really matters. What you did and against whom you did it matters a lot to me. Dallas held the Giants' offense to 3 points. Dallas then let Trevor Siemian march up and down the field. So it's not like, they were just playing a greatly improved Dallas defense. No, it looks like that was what happened in the Giants-Cowboys game, was that the Giants just had no offense. They need Odell Beckham out there, even if he's not 100%. I know that from what you've told me, he wants to play. If he doesn't play because the team holds him out, man, this team knows. All right, hold up. Coming up next, if you look at the schedule, after this week, we've got at Philly, at Tampa Bay. Those are not easy football games. They need the best wide receiver in football out there. And so I don't think the Giants can win this game without him. I think he's one of the only, if not the only, wide receiver in the league where I'd say that, where if he's out, his team's drawing dead. But it speaks to how talented he is and how bereft of talent the rest of that offense is.
When you talk about having him out there, it's not just having him out there for the workload, because at most is he's maybe 75% at most. So could he do more for the Giants? I don't love the word decoy, but he could do more for the Giants with his presence alone than if he wasn't in the lineup at all.
No, that's a great word choice. Way better than get jiggy.
Oh, right. Guess what? The jiggy thing has been retired officially. I will never say it
The
again.
thing with Odell, if he's on the field, they're double teaming him immediately.
Right.
Even at 75% or whatever he is.
They don't know. They don't know. What they're going to think is, if he's on the field, he's healthy.
Okay.
That's how opposing defenses treat a player. If he's out here, we're going to tackle him, and he's supposed to be healthy. So he can draw the double team, which takes one guy out of the box so you can run the ball. The Giants need to run the football, all right, and get Brandon Marshall involved. So Odell tilts the numbers in the Giants' favor, but you still have to make plays. They have to make a conscious effort to run the ball. And Brandon's got to be a huge contributor in the passing game.
To speak to your question, Jenna, since Odell came into the league, I'm not talking about passes thrown to Odell, just Eli Manning passing to anybody. With Odell on the field, he has a passer rating of 91, 5 touchdowns for every 1 interception. With Odell off the field, either because of suspension, injury, his rookie season, injury this season, he has a touchdown-interception ratio of less than 1-to-1, so more interceptions than touchdowns, and he has a quarterback rating of 75. He's just a different player when Odell's on the field, not on the field. We saw that in the final season before Odell got to New York, when Eli had 18 touchdowns, 27 picks. Obviously, a lot of those numbers are because Odell's the one catching the ball, but it's also because the other wide receivers and the tight ends have a clearer path because the defense is skewed so heavily to his side. When you add to that the fact that they don't yet have an established running game, that their left tackle, Eric Flowers, does not yet look to be an NFL caliber player, you need a guy out there that you can throw a quick slant to and go get you 60 yards. That's how they beat the Lions last year. The defense choked them out, kept it close. Odell made the game-winning play. That's the path to victory for the Giants tonight. And I don't see a path to victory, barring a Matt Stafford meltdown on national television, for the Giants tonight if Odell doesn't play.
Yes or no? Do you want him to play where he is now?
I want to watch him play.
Okay.
I want to watch him play.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review, tell us what you think, subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolf. So long, everybody. Welcome to a Friday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolf. Catch us Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and tell us what you think. Leave us a review. Time to bring in Nick and the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. Giants got some good news regarding Odell Beckham. Their star receiver returned to practice yesterday for the first time since injuring his ankle in the preseason. Reportedly, the Giants are optimistic Beckham will play Monday night versus the Lions. Odell would have liked to be on the field week 1, but looking back, he realizes it wasn't very likely.
Honestly, I don't really know how realistic it was. As bad as I wanted to play, it just wasn't there. It had been, 3 weeks after the injury. It hasn't even been a month since it happened. And, this is a 6 to 8 week thing. Unfortunately, as much as I was trying my hardest to get out there, it just wasn't enough time. It's probably the best I felt yet, so I'm going in the right direction.
Okay, guys, it sounds positive. It sounds like he wants to play, but he knows why he couldn't play. Can the Giants beat the Lions if he doesn't play?
They can beat the Lions if he does not play, but he's going to play. And like I talked about last week, as far as practice, Nick is starting to understand slightly. He still doesn't believe that I'm correct in the matter. Practice is very, very important. And him being out there on a Thursday, now this is a different Thursday than it would be, because in NFL schedule, when you play on Monday, the coaches move the schedule back. So your typically off day would be a Tuesday. They move it to Wednesday. So your hardest days, when you play a Monday night game, they're on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Now, the Wednesday practice is not that important. The Thursday practice is paramount because they're starting to put the game plan in. And this is the first time the Giants could look at him, see him running, and be like, you know something? We could put a scheme in because we think he's going to be there. He couldn't play in the Dallas game. He tried to. He didn't get medical clearance. But if you left it up to him, if it had been a playoff game, he would have played in it. So he's right. It is a 6 to 8 week injury. I didn't want to say it before, but he let the cat out the bag. He had a high ankle sprain. I've been knowing that the whole time. I just didn't want to say it. The Giants didn't want people to know. And that's what prolonged the ankle injury compared to some other ankle injuries. But they have to have him on the field. This offense is not an explosive offense, even though they have a few nice little pieces. That offensive line, their inability for them to block Eli's inability to be consistent, and those things are magnified if Odell is not there.
But he's playing Monday.
Yes, he's absolutely playing on Monday.
You told us a week ago or a week and a half ago on the first day of the show, Thursday's the practice to look for week 1. Didn't practice in week 1. He was a limited participant yesterday. You've talked to him. You expect him to play on Monday. And it is a damn good thing he's going to play on Monday, because I remember Mark Schlereth, I think, told me, listen, players, we don't look ahead to the schedule. Our season's always 1 week long, and it's just the guy in front of you. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. But the coaches, GMs, guys that are looking maybe from a more 10,000-foot view, they do look at the schedule. And you know what the Giants have after this home game respite against the Lions? They're in Philly. They're in Tampa. They started the season in Dallas. We knew going into the season the Giants were going to be betting underdogs in 3 of their first 4 games. Doesn't mean you can't win them, but Vegas is going to say you are unlikely to win 3 of your first 4. The one game where they would be favorites, home against Detroit. You can't have Odell not be in this game, because if he were to not play in this game, you have no offense in this game. And while I think Detroit's a flawed team, Detroit can score some points.
Yes.
Even on the New York Giants, they can score some points. You need Odell to just be able to give your offense enough of a heartbeat to where you can score enough points to win this game. And we've talked about how if you fall to 0-2, 88% of the time you don't make the playoffs. The Giants, if they were to not win Monday night, forget 0-2. they'd be looking at potentially 0-3, 1-3, 0-4, and then your season is gone. So it's critical he plays.
But, Nick, you said they need Odell to at least give this offense a heartbeat. They need a lot more than just a heartbeat from Odell to beat this Lions team. Do you worry at all that you know he's not 100%? He knows he's not 100%. So we shouldn't expect him to have an Odell Beckham last year type of game in this game. Do you worry that you're rushing him back a little too soon because you're going to probably give him more than he can or should handle, and you know he's going to want it? Is that a concern at all in rushing him back?
It's not a concern because I see the way he's moving. In his lateral movement, which is more important for a wide receiver, especially getting off the bump and run, which you have to play bump and run with a safety help over the top against Odell because he's such a great route runner and he has such a high football IQ that he will pick you apart if you just try to play zone and play off of him. I remember when I had this injury. I tried to play week number 1 with it. I wasn't very, very effective. But after that, I remember we came to New York and played the Giants. And I had 100 yards in the first half.
But did you
in the 3rd week of the ankle injury? So he's done everything. He's got a great staff around him, not only the Giants staff, but the staff that he personally has hired to be able to train him, to be able to take care of him. He's spent 24 hours around the clock trying to get this ankle. I expect big things out of Odell.
And Jenna, so a few things. One, that it is a 6 to 8 week injury. But that is the time frame until you're as close to full strength as you will get. It is not an injury where you are out 6 to 8 weeks. With Thomas Rawls, suffered a high ankle sprain this preseason around the same time as Odell. He is expected to play this week. You mentioned if it were a playoff game. We saw a wide receiver. We want to go position for position. Jeremy Maclin suffer a high ankle sprain in a wild card game for the Chiefs and play the following week. So that's not smart, but in the playoffs, you're not worried about the long-term rest of your season.
Right.
So it is something that, not like a broken leg, you can't fight through it. You can fight through this. What would have been silly or potentially long-term damaging would have been if he would have played week 1. It's why Cris was on the phone with him saying, calm down. It's a long season. You don't need to play week 1. But the other thing you said, Jenna, was in order to beat the Lions. I do not believe the Lions are some great team. I think last year they got by on smoke and mirrors, comebacks against bad teams. Week 1, people are impressed with what they did against Arizona. We might find out Arizona, especially offensively, is one of the most limited teams in football. I think you're going to see the Lions, as you did many times last season. When they're up against a really good defense, Matt Stafford becomes a much more limited quarterback. So I don't think the Lions are going to go out there and score 35 points on the Giants. The problem is, if you don't have Odell, you might not score 10 points.
I mean, they don't have to score points. I mean, how long has it been since the Giants have scored 24 points with their offense?
It's been 7 straight games they have not scored at least 20 points. Forget 24. They haven't scored at least 20 against a playoff team since week 1 of last season. Their method has been simple. Suffocating defense, huge plays from Odell Beckham. They had the suffocating defense against Dallas.
Yes.
What they didn't have was the huge plays from Odell Beckham.
I just want to go back to something you said earlier that I practically tackled you to interrupt you for, in which case you kept steamrolling, which was good. It was very TV-ish of you. You said you came back after you hurt yourself. Your first game, you were not effective, and then the second, third, and fourth. Do you regret playing in that first game? If you could do it over again, would you have waited that first game and come back strong the second game and not have had an ineffective game?
Well, I regret it a little bit because eventually it became more of a nagging injury, and I did have to have it cleaned out a couple years later on, and that's what ends up happening because it's a weird injury. So you might get a bone spur if you play with the injury in the front. I've made that point to Odell, and he understands that. But at that time, I think I had a streak of 180-something games in a row.
There we go.
So I had to run on out there to keep that thing going.
Okay, so
but I really thought that I could play, and I was totally against getting any type of injection. As a wide receiver, it's hard to play with an injection to your ankle. And Odell was totally against. Not that the Giants recommended it, but he was not trying to take anything, any shot or any medication to take away the pain, but he could really injure himself in week
Just getting back to my point, do you want him in the lineup if he is going to maybe be ineffective, maybe have, what did you have, a bone spur, stress fracture, whatever it is. I mean, these are things that could happen if you don't come back.
Listen,
that 100 yards against the Giants, though, the bone spur, I'll get over
and
that.
Here's
but
the
will
thing.
he get over that?
But here's the thing, Jenna. That we know he might be ineffective, he might not be. We know the Giants will be ineffective without him. And as far as long-term, a year later having to have an ankle procedure, I mean, it's pro football. None of these guys leave the league okay.
Yeah, you saw my ankles on the basketball court. They're all right.
I mean,
Ankles.
I suppose, but like Cris, like I've played basketball with Cris. I've been in locker rooms with Cris. Cris looks like a guy that got beat up because he got beat up for a living. All these guys get beat up for a living. It's part of the deal.
So the Cowboys are taking on the Broncos this weekend. Cowboys wide receiver Dez Bryant only had 2 catches in Week 1 versus the Giants and faces a pair of formidable Bronco cornerbacks in Chris Harris Jr. and Aqib Talib. Nick, how much pressure is Dez Bryant under versus Denver?
I mean, a lot of pressure if he wants to be considered what he once was considered, which is obviously one of the 5 best receivers in the league. Just a couple years ago, someone said, who are the best receivers in football? It would be hard to get someone to say, people would argue about number 1, but these were the names: Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown, A.J. Green, Dez Bryant. And people argued about the order of those 5 names. If you ask people right now, who are the 10 best receivers in football? People are not naming Dez.
He's right on the fringe.
He has gone from a guy who was in the argument for 1 or 2 and clearly top 5 to a guy who is now considered, like, would you rather have Dez Bryant or Jordy Nelson? I don't know. Would you rather have, I think DeAndre Hopkins better than, like, go down Julian Edelman? I'm not sure. That's insane for a guy of his physical talents, and it's insane for a guy who has reached the peaks he reached. Years 3, 4, 5 CC of his career, he averages 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns. It's his averages. Since then, in the 2 seasons plus a game since then, he has not reached those averages cumulatively. I don't know what the story is. I don't know what's happened. I don't know why he hasn't, gotten better. I don't know why he hasn't maintained, but it's a puzzling one for me.
Well, the number one thing that's happened in Dallas is they have more talent around them. As far as they throw the ball to Cole Beasley, Jason Witten still needs a couple catches, Terrence Williams, he still gets the ball, and that guy back there, number 21, he's going to carry the ball, touch the ball at least 20 to 25 times a game. So people might point to, well, his injuries are starting to compile that maybe he lost a step. Well, when you run 4.5, when you come into the league, a lot like I did, I ran into upper 4.5s. Dez is probably a little bit faster than I was. You can afford to lose a step because you're not getting open based on your speed. The biggest difference between Dez and a player like myself, Dez is right now, we don't know where he is. Is he leveling off? Is he declining? Or is there still a couple floors in the building that he can go to? I believe that there is, because I believe that adding some variety, you need to move Dez Bryant around. You cannot line him up in one spot. They put Jackrabbit. New Orleans.
Janoris Jenkins.
Yes. The Giants' best corner who shut Dez down last year. When you have that type of matchup, you cannot line a guy up in one spot and just say, physically, I want you to be better than this guy. So offensively, the Cowboys, they have to help Dez out. Now, Dez, he's got to be able to open up his mind to be able to learn a different route tree. There's 2 different route trees. There's one for the slot receivers, and there's one for the outside receivers. Dez has been predominantly an outside receiver. And the reason why I believe his game can grow was because in year number 8 for me, Nick, I made my first Pro Bowl. Now, after that, I went to 7 more Pro Bowls after that. So it would be impossible for me to believe Dez has hit the ceiling as far as his growth. He's doing everything he can off the field. He takes great care of his body. He's getting the right amount of rest and sleep. He's not hanging out doing a lot of the silly, immature things he was doing before. But Dallas and Dez have to come together, and they have to be able to do some things different because the NFL, they have the book on Dez Bryant. And that book is he's only going to run 3 or 4 routes. Now, I believe that Dez is a better player than that. I thought that he would be in that top 5 for 5 to 8 years, and he hasn't been, but I still believe that Dez Bryant is still one of the elite wide receivers in the game.
So you say, CC, that Dallas and Dez need to come together to figure this out. Is it Dallas and Dez, or is it Dak and Dez? And how much stock should be placed in that relationship between the quarterback and the receiver? And when they're not on the same page, sometimes the receiver does not stay on the same page.
Well, Dak and Dez are on the same page. He was targeted the number of times you want to target your number one guy.
He was targeted more than anybody else on the team.
Yes, but he didn't get open. I mean, that's not Dak's fault. That's not chemistry. That's, I'm better than you. He wasn't better than Jackrabbit. So if he's not better physically, you have to build a trick to defense. Give the defense a different look. Line him up somewhere where they haven't seen him. Run him on a route that they don't have you booked on. Those are the things I'm talking about as far as coming together. Dak, there is no problem with Dak. All right?
So change the whole offense around to make it better for him?
Just add a little flavor.
It's what every team does with their best receiver. That's the thing. Like, once the show's over, 9:30 Eastern America, go on YouTube and look up highlights of Odell, Julio, Antonio Brown. Guess what you'll see? Some of those highlights come from the slot. Some come from the left, some come from the right.
Yes.
So that is what you do with your best players. Chris has told me as soon as Randy got to Minnesota, you started teaching him your stuff.
Yes.
That way you guys could signal to each other, I'll be you and you'll be me, but we've got to know what the other guy's responsibilities are.
And because the coaches had so much confidence in Randy's mental makeup and his football IQ. Randy proved to them in the meetings and on the field, there's nothing that I can't learn. So the coaches used to call a play, and it might be designed for me to get the ball. If Randy was hot at that time, Randy and I had the ability under Brian Billick's system that we could switch. And Randy would be in my spot. We call it chasing the ball. We call it getting the ball to the hot player. And Randy and I had that flexibility. I never played with any other player who had that ability or football IQ. And that was one of the things that made Randy special. But the system, like I told you from yesterday, the system they put us in allowed that flexibility. Now, Scott Lanahan is one of the great coordinators in Dallas, great play caller. But you're subject to the mental makeup of the wide receivers. If they can't do it, as a coordinator, Scott can't do it. And also, they run the ball pretty good.
Well, and that's the other point here. It's not as if Dez is he's as productive as he can be given his targets. They're just running the ball, and his numbers are dropping despite the fact that they are still focusing on him. He's still getting the targets. The issue is not lack of opportunity for Dez Bryant right now. The issue is lack of him executing upon being given that opportunity.
You know, if you look at last year's playoff game, when Dallas was in trouble, Dez Bryant brought them back.
Yep.
To me, that player is still there. You have to help the player. Put him in different situations where he can utilize his ability. Dez Bryant is just not a jump ball 50-50. Run down the sideline in bump and run, throw the ball up, 50-50 ball. Dez Bryant. At this stage of his career, there has to be more substance to what he can do with his brain compared to his physical ability. Mark Schlereth sat right here and said, the great players, as they get older in the league, they play more from the neck up than they do from the neck down. And that's what we're seeing in Dallas, and that's my expectation of Dez. I believe that Dez is still elite, and I believe we're going to see that throughout the season.
We're joined by Fox NFL analyst Eric Mangini. Coach, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good to be back. I missed you.
Coach, in your honor, we have it #Spicy Friday.
Spicy Friday?
Yeah, but not over this way. Right towards him. Your comments, spicy, right
Every
in there.
Friday with me is
Let me interpret for you.
There you go.
I don't need a hashtag.
The New England Patriots take on the Saints on Sunday. Both teams searching for their first win of the season. Pats looking to avoid their first 0-2 start since 2001. That's bad. The Saints, on the other hand, have lost their first 2 games each of the last 3 years. That's normal. Coach, should the Patriots be worried about Tom Brady or the defense against the Saints? Which one?
The defense is going to be something that it's difficult to play in New Orleans. Okay, it's difficult playing against Sean Payton's offense. It's shifts, it's motions, it's multiple personnel groups, it's gadget formations, it's multiples of multiples. So they're going to have to simplify. They're going to have to simplify anyways based off last week's performance. But then to go in and have to deal with this much stuff, they're going to have to take a step back to try to slow them down. And even with that, it's really, really difficult to slow this offense down.
Coach, when you talk about step back,
yep.
are you talking about the amount of information that you're presenting to the players in preparation? Are you talking about the amount of things that you would do? Say if we had 5 staple defenses going into this game or 5 staple coverages, are we limiting those coverage based on we don't know what we have in New England yet?
Well, it's a little bit, we don't know what we have in New England, and then it's also dealing with New Orleans offense. So if you try to match that, if you try to match and take away certain guys and do specific game plan things, Sean's going to give you formations that you haven't seen. He's going to motion in and out of bunch and stacked receivers. It's going to be 5 wide receivers, and then it's going to be 3 tight. It's just never ending. So you can overwhelm the guys going into a game like that, where everybody's chasing the last play, and you don't want to do that. You want to settle them down, have something easy. Now, that being said, if Drew Brees knows what you're in trouble as well. So you better disguise whatever you're in, and you've got to simplify it too. It's hard. It's really hard.
I'm probably viewed maybe unfairly as like the resident Patriots skeptic because I didn't pick them to go to the Super Bowl.
I don't think there's anything unfair
Well,
about that.
because I had the audacity to say the Steelers might be better. And I had the audacity after week 1 to say, well, I mean, they were not good in many facets of the game. Maybe it means something. I think the Patriots will win this game. I would be shocked if New Orleans wins this game. If the Patriots win and the defense struggles, man, that's the Saints in New Orleans. That's what you're talking about. Like you can,
yes.
If they win this game 35-31,
that's a legitimate
That's
excuse.
not going to concern. My level of concern about the defense will not be raised. New Orleans at home. New Orleans, by the way, this is their only home game until week 6. Like they recognize the importance of this game, how much better they are in New Orleans on offense. If the Patriots win this game, but Tom Brady isn't sharp against that defense, a defense that has been bottom 2 in the league 4 of the last 5 years and sure looked like they were going to continue that trend in week 1 against the Vikings, that's when I think more people start being concerned about Tom Brady. There would be no reason for the Patriots offense to struggle in New Orleans in week 2.
Well, I don't think that's totally fair. The defense in New Orleans, they put a lot of money into the defense. They've done a lot of things to try to improve the defense. So we don't know if this year's defense is going to be the same as the last 2 years' defense.
We did see Sam Bradford have the single greatest game since he was at Oklahoma.
Look,
against this defense.
and there's a lot of things that happen in game 1 that you'd love to say, oh, my God, this is exactly how the rest of the 15 games are going to go. But it's not always realistic. We're going to learn more over the next few weeks. And I think it's the same thing defensively with New Orleans. How much have they really made progress versus how much are they the same system we've seen or the same product we've seen?
What makes the Patriots, I think, so intimidating, or what has done that in the last couple of years, is how good number 12 is. He usually doesn't make mistakes. He's flawless when he goes out there. He knows how to win games, even when they're losing. If he plays poorly in this game, does it change the mindset of other teams coming in that, hey, now 2 teams have gotten to him? Maybe this isn't such a tough roadblock after all.
Well, I would caution anybody that walks in to play Tom Brady of underestimating him.
Yes.
Because he will light you up. He'll hang 40 on you, and you'll think, oh, my God, this guy is 40, and then he'll hang 40 on you. Because that's who he is.
And then he'll run a 4.240.
Yeah, well,
5'2", 6'2".
Yeah, the 40
is not his strength.
Yeah, that's not going to be.
Saying, he's going to do all those other great things. Why not?
Right. One thing though, it's one thing to go against a Kansas City defense, and you have to, as a fan, you have to realize Kansas City has great personnel. All right, they have a great secondary, not a good one. They got a great secondary. They have very good linebackers. They have a great defensive line. They got a great defensive coordinator who has had some success going against New England. So in New Orleans, they don't have that. They're secondary. New England will exploit their secondary. New England has better wide receivers than Minnesota does. All right? New England's ability, can they run the ball like Minnesota did with Dalvin Cook? Because that will allow Tom, because they got to take some of the pressure off of Tom. And that's what you're able to do with a running game. But I've seen this. If you slight Tom Brady, if you try to play 40 snaps of man-to-man, he will definitely throw for 350 yards, and they will score 40 points on the Saints. I expect this game to be a blowout. Watch Tom Brady correct, especially when he had time in the pocket. He will correct that, and he will be a lot more accurate with the football than he was in week number 1.
We're all, I would imagine, going to pick the Patriots to win this game. That obviously doesn't mean they will win this game. We talked yesterday about teams that go 0-2. 88% of them miss the playoffs. There's a more interesting, if you kind of do a dive on that when it comes to the Patriots, because their goal is not to make the playoffs. Like, making the playoffs is a given for New England with Tom Brady. They missed the playoffs after they won their first Super Bowl, and they missed the playoffs the year. You're mad at me for saying it's a given with Tom Brady?
This is the
they make it every year.
But Slow down. This is what Coach's face said. Coach's face said. Well, first of all, they don't think they're going to make the playoffs.
Yes, they do.
They don't.
They're not going to tell anybody.
You do. No, they don't. They do not think that way. They don't think that.
They think they're going to miss the playoffs?
They're not thinking about it. What they're trying to do is play.
Well, let's ask.
Well, they're not,
okay, what do I know?
No, I'm just saying.
I have to say, they're not sitting around a staff meeting going, "Whew, look, if we go 0-2,
no,
88% of the times we're not going to make." All they care, and I must not.
So have respect to the system. That's all we're saying.
Yeah, I'm not doing a good job articulating how dedicated and committed they are to the game-by-game, moment-by-moment, meeting-by-minute meeting philosophy.
I believe
that's real.
I believe that, but that's because that is the way the Patriots assess things. Doesn't mean football fans across America can't look at historical trends and say, what does this mean for the future? So the point that I'm
But address it to the fans. Don't address it to the Patriots, because the Patriots don't think that way.
With respect, I don't think the Patriots are watching.
Man.
So I'm talking to you, America.
No, Mr. Kraft. Mr. Kraft is a friend of mine. He's watching.
It's on right now in every office.
Let me make the point that I was trying to make.
All meetings on hold for this show.
It is, even if the Patriots were to lose to the Saints, I am not worried about them falling into that 88%. I still think they will make the playoffs. But the Patriots' goal, even if I'm the only one that thinks it, is to win the Super Bowl. 3 teams
That's every team's goal.
Hold up. Wait, whoa. So I just want to make sure I understand. They're not thinking about the playoffs, but they are thinking about goals. Okay, got it. But let me just get this number out there.
It's universal. You go into the season with the goal of winning the Super Bowl. It's not like, hey guys, we get to the playoffs, we'll high five.
To win the Super Bowl.
Do we want to win a sport, Timmy? Do you want to win a sport, Timmy?
I mean, I just want to get the Hall of Fame first. Can I give my stat, damn it? The point that I'm trying to make is this, is teams that start 0-2, 3 of them have won the Super Bowl. The 93 Cowboys, why'd they start 0-2, CC? What was different in 93?
Emmitt Smith.
The best player maybe in the league, certainly their best player, held out. Mm-hmm. The 0-1 Pats started 0-2. What was different after the first 2 games?
Quarterback change.
Tom Brady became the quarterback in game 2. And the 07 Giants, which is still to this day considered one of the most amazing Super Bowl teams ever because they beat the undefeated Patriots. The point is, there is not a precedent for teams starting 0-2 without an amazing influx of talent. Tom Brady, Emmitt Smith, or a one-off, once-in-a-lifetime team like the Giants winning the Super Bowl. That's why this game is critical for them. We all think they're going to win it, and evidently the Patriots won't care. It'll just be the next week, and we're not worried about anything long-term. But I think the audience should know that is the historical precedent of where we're at.
I think you should take the day off and give yourself a raise.
Okay,
after getting that one in.
Thank you very much.
# Spicy Friday.
Spicy Friday. Coach Eric Mangini back with us. The Falcons opened their brand new stadium Sunday night in an NFC Championship rematch. Last season in that game, the Falcons jumped out to a 24-0 lead en route to a 44-21 win. Aaron Rodgers was asked if there was a revenge factor heading into Sunday.
I mean, it's past. They won the game. They went to the Super Bowl. So you can't rewrite history. It's just, 2 1-0 teams who both feel like we can, be there in the end of the season. These are kind of games like last week that, you win these games, you feel better in December and January when you're coming down to filling out that 12-team bracket. No, it's going to be great. It's too bad Chick-fil-A is not open, but it's going to be exciting.
Before we dive in, you want to give the Chick-fil-A reference?
Chick-fil-A is an Atlanta staple. Chick-fil-A is one of the few companies left in America that just has decided we will never be open on Sundays. They put a Chick-fil-A in the new Falcon Stadium. Pro football games are played on Sunday, and Chick-fil-A is not changing its policy. So they have a Chick-fil-A concession that will not be open for this game. It'll be open for college games.
But never.
I'm just going to go on the limb and say it's Sunday in Atlanta. There will be some chicken being fried in Atlanta somewhere.
Maybe not in the stadium.
Yes.
Coach, who's got more on the line in this game, the Packers or the Falcons?
The most interesting thing to me about this game, from Atlanta's perspective, is that there's two new coordinators. So the offensive coordinator is new. The defense coordinator, even though he was on the staff, he's new. The team's coming off Super Bowl. They struggle to see Dan Quinn navigate through all of this and to see how Atlanta not only deals with last year, but how they deal with the amount of transition that they had. That's what I'm looking at. And then from a Green Bay's perspective, defensively, they've committed a ton of resources to this defense. Draft picks, I think the first 4 this year. They've got 5 number 1s on defense. I want to see that evolution. And I really like the pickup late of Quentin Dial and Ahmad Brooks. I think those two guys are going to help sub in and support this defense. So that's what I'm looking at from their perspective.
Green Bay has so much to gain by winning this game and by showing everybody our defense, the resources we've allocated have been well allocated. They were down, as Jenna mentioned, 24-0 in the first half of the NFC Championship game. I think 31-0 at the beginning of the second half against Atlanta. If they just shut down Seattle, I think Seattle's got not a great offense, but I think Seattle's got a good offense. I think Russell Wilson's an excellent player. Doug Baldwin's a good wide receiver. They shut them down. I came into this season believing Aaron Rodgers is the best player in the world, the best quarterback in the world, but that defense is not going to be good enough to win 3 consecutive playoff games or 4 consecutive playoff games as you need to win the Super Bowl. If Green Bay wins this game, they will almost by definition have slowed down Atlanta's offense more than they did in the NFC Championship game. And they will already have the head-to-head tiebreaker when it comes to home field advantage against the Seahawks and against the Falcons. And even if the teams aren't looking ahead like that, I'm looking ahead and saying that's going to matter. So I think Green Bay has enormous amounts.
You're like a lighthouse. You're guiding us all.
No, exactly. That's
Nick, it does matter. It's very important. But what's more important is the overall continuity of what Atlanta is doing. It's the big home opener. There's a lot of stuff going on, outside noise, as New England calls it, and I've learned from Coach. It's not distractions, it's just noise. But what kind of team are they going to be? I mean, because I've been on some very, very explosive offensive teams. In the mid-'90s, we got Warren Moon. Him and I went on to break NFL records. We scored a bunch of points.
244 catches.
Tom Moore was the offensive coordinator. Tom Moore went on to go somewhere else. After that, the offense struggled. So guys in the locker room, we knew that even though it was the same personnel, man, what are we doing? What's our identity? Then came Brian Billick. Man, we had one of the greatest offense in NFL at that time. Most points a game. And then Brian goes to Baltimore. We get another coordinator. We struggled that next year. We had Randy Moss, myself, Robert Smith, 3 all-pro offensive linemen. Internally, we began to question, man, does that guy know what he's doing? I mean, because we put up points. Like, we know how to do this. Is he really putting us in the right position? Chris, man, are you playing in the slots? Should you be playing outside a little more now? So what Atlanta is going through offensively and defensively, it's real. A lot of fans and stuff won't look at it, but Dan Quinn, I believe, is one of the great young coaches in the NFL. How he decides to manage that and how he gets through this transition time, it's very, very important. But it's more important that offense looks good. Why? Not only for the players and their confidence, because their defense, we know they're going to give up some points. We know they're undersized. We know they want to create turnovers. But that defense is a defense that plays better when they're playing with a lead than they are coming from behind.
And when you look, when you insert a new human being into the mix, even if the playbook doesn't change at all, the play calling changes, the approach changes, the meetings change, and that's an adjustment. It's an adjustment from a coaching staff perspective, and it's an adjustment for the players. And there is a legitimacy factor. Coming off the offensive performance that they had, the new coordinator's got to prove that he can give them those same tools. And at the flip side, defensively, how much can they improve with the new coordinator?
And piggybacking off what you said, you don't want to be labeled as having a Super Bowl hangover, right? To have gone that far and to have done what you did and to beat the Packers like you did last year and all this, and then to start the year 0-2, I think psychologically it's also a big thorn in your side trying to get through the rest of the season. Does that weigh on the team at all, Cris?
It does. I've never lost a Super Bowl. I've lost 2 NFC championships, and it was horrible. I've had good friends who have lost in the Super Bowl, and they told me, Cris, that cry that you had that night, you think that's bad? You go on 2 weeks later and you lose a Super Bowl. So losing the biggest game that you will ever play in the style for which you lose, we have seen through history. It has some type of effect. Now, how Atlanta deals with it, because I love Dan Quinn, how him and Matty Ice, they addressed it this offseason. They've looked at the game. They went over all the mistakes. They realized they could have made a few adjustments. They're not making excuses, but they did address the elephant in the room. Wow, we should have won that Super Bowl. So I believe that they've gone about it the right way, but it's monumental, and only those who have been through that know the gut-wrenching experience that it is.
I want to ask you a question real quick, because you, in the last segment, you were talking about one of the things that makes New England special is their ability to focus on the here and now, something I wasn't recognizing. They are in the moment. I think it's fair to say not every team can do that, right? That's one of the reasons the Patriots are the Patriots.
Yeah, it's really hard to do.
Okay, so if you're the Falcons and in the NFC Championship game, you beat the brakes off Green Bay, then you had the Super Bowl meltdown, whatever it is, you're up 28-3 as Cris was talking about. In week 1, you don't play that great. I know you got out with a win, but Mike Glennon is on your goal line with 2 passes fluttering into the end zone to beat you. You know that happened. If a Green Bay team that you then just beat 3 games ago for you comes in your building and beats you, for teams that aren't New England, do they start questioning? Do they start saying, what's happened to us? Why are we not the same?
Well, after we won the first Super Bowl in New England, the next year, things were really difficult. And we ended up missing the playoffs because we didn't deal very well with success. We didn't understand how teams were going to change in terms of the way that they approach us. And it's the same thing whether you win or whether you lose. The locker room, everybody thinks I was the reason. Not everybody, but there's a ego that you have to deal with that you didn't have to deal with the year before, and then you add the transition and all those things. It's going to be challenging. This is uncharted waters for Dan Quinn and for that locker room. It's going to be really hard for them to figure it out and figure out what they have to do to be as good as they were last year.
Finally, the Texans won a super exciting Thursday night contest last night versus the Bengals. And by exciting, I mean not so much. Making his first ever start, Deshaun Watson went 15-24 for 125 yards and ran for a 49-yard touchdown. CC, what were your thoughts on Watson?
My thoughts were the same thing I said before the game. If you have a questionable offensive line, forget about Savage. Forget about his agent, what they're talking about. Put someone in there who can make plays with their legs. Also, he's going to be the face of the franchise for years to come. So what was the difference in this game? It wasn't game planning. It was Deshaun Watson's ability to be an athlete and make some plays with his legs after getting smoked by Geno Atkins. I mean,
man, I'm glad you mentioned it.
And most quarterbacks, young ones, they don't recover from that.
If you didn't see the game, the most impressive part wasn't the touchdown run. It was what Cris mentioned. It was what immediately preceded the touchdown run. Deshaun Watson made a rookie mistake, held onto the ball too long, was backpedaling, and Geno Atkins, who might be the fastest 300-pound man in America, came rumbling, bumbling.
Let me tell you something you don't know. I coached Geno Atkins in high school also.
Really?
He was on that team.
Okay. Well, I believe the high school Cris coach has like 11 pros. Not the point. Geno Atkins came free. It was a stunt, a delay. He waits. The Texans' offensive line is totally confused. The Bengals' most dangerous defensive player comes totally free and obliterates.
I mean, he ran through him.
Ran through Deshaun Watson. On the next play, Deshaun Watson scored the game's only touchdown. the most important play of the game. It was wildly impressive to see that type of poise.
So nice to know that Houston now has their 16th quarterback in the last 8 minutes.
Yeah.
My question to you, Nick, is could the Texans have won this game with Tom Savage at the helm?
No. Well, the thing is this. It would have just been a field goal battle. It would have just been field goal. I don't think they could have. They needed his elusiveness, not just on that play, but on avoiding some other sacks. But remember what I said was one of my favorite things about week 1, that we see games and we don't know which team it's telling us more about. The Chiefs-Pats game we talked so much about, is that telling us the Pats could be in trouble or the Chiefs are awesome? Baltimore, Cincinnati, week 1. Everyone took that as a testimonial. The Ravens defense is back to what it used to be. This Ravens team could be really dangerous. Might just be Cincinnati is trash, and that Andy Dalton has gone back to the full-on Andy Dalton regression from a few years ago. Like, that Cincinnati is yet to score a touchdown this season playing Baltimore and now Houston.
Now, I do believe Savage could win a game, especially when Houston's defense is playing like they did. All right? I believe that the trauma of being involved in that horrific storm and the emotion of trying to help people and also get moved back from training camp, all those things are a huge distraction for a locker room. They didn't look well in week number 1. This defense looked like the Houston defense that we are expecting throughout the season. But could Savage win this game? Yes, he could have won this game, but there was one thing that I know would not have happened. When Deshaun Watson made that great run, watch the reception of the other players on the team. The defensive players were running down to the end zone. So the ability to be able to galvanize a team and to be able to win tight games, that right there, I don't think Savage can do.
And props to Savage, though, because he met Watson right on the sideline and congratulated him as well. He wasn't sulking.
Well, that's your job when you're backing me up, is to come meet me after I do good stuff.
Okay.
That's actually a really good point that we didn't talk about, was how the other team rallied, or how the rest of the Texans rallied around him. Moving on, Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz was one of the stars of week 1, throwing for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. So now the Eagles take on the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend, the same Chiefs who kept Tom Brady under wraps in week 1. CC, can Carson Wentz prove he is a star if he beats Kansas City now?
Well, it would be another huge step. Kansas City is an amazing place to go see a football game. If you've never been there, I mean, it is really one of the loudest, most difficult.
Let's go.
The way the fans, crazy people like Nick Wright, they love their Chiefs. I don't think this game will be the one you say, you know something, I believe that Carson Wentz, week number 2, but it is a very hard test for a young quarterback. I believe Carson Wentz has the it factor. I believe he is the face of that franchise, and we will see in year number 2, especially with putting professional receivers. They've made wholesale changes as far as the receivers are concerned, so we will see that. But I believe that the Chiefs will go on to continue what they proved in week number 1. They're one of the best teams in the NFL and has one of the best defenses.
I came into this year agnostic on Carson Wentz, not knowing if it was going to be great, bad, mediocre. After week 1, I got evidence for both sides. I saw him make 3 outstanding plays, avoid the rush, move around, strikes down the field. But I also saw him on plays with a clean pocket throw some really bad balls, including what should have been an easy Nelson Aguilar touchdown that was just flatly missed. So I still don't know. So you would think, against the Chiefs, we're going to figure it out. I think this will be the worst game for the Chiefs defense all year. It's their first game without Eric Berry. That's going to take some time. Eric Berry is the most important member of that defense. We saw Seattle, a team last year, lose their free safety.
Yes.
The other guy who was in contention, Berry and the safety in Seattle, Earl Thomas, are the 2 best free safeties in football. We saw when Seattle lost him, their defense fell apart, was not the same. An amazing stat this morning that I looked up. With Earl Thomas, Seattle gave up a passer rating equivalent to Ryan Fitzpatrick league-wide. Without him, they gave up a passer rating equivalent to Tom Brady league-wide. Shout out to Bill Barnwell for putting that in his article. So that's the impact one of these safeties can make. So that's a long bridge to build to say this. If Wentz looks awesome, I'm going to wonder, is it because my guy Dusty's right and Wentz is great, or is it because the Chiefs are learning to adjust without Eric Berry?
I believe Wentz will be great. You mentioned the two safeties, Earl Thomas and our boy Eric Berry. I've trained with Eric Berry since he came out of Tennessee.
I had a drink with him once.
I've never had a drink with him.
I'm married to him,
But
so there you go.
This is the point I want to make.
I guess I won.
Earl Thomas is a great player, but Eric Berry is even more valuable. And the reason why, he took Gronk out of the game last week. All right? Earl Thomas covers a lot of ground, erases a lot of mistakes, but he doesn't play man-to-man. Eric Berry plays in the box. They had a 4th down in inches. He's playing middle linebacker, gets through the line of scrimmage, hits the running back in the backfield. So to me, the most valuable safety in the NFL is out for Kansas City. Now, what adjustments? Sutton, the defensive coordinator, tremendous game plan week number 1. What does he do going forward without Berry?
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review, tell us what you think, subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolf. So long, everybody.